IKEA's IVAR is a great product. We've got few of them around the house, used for general storage and as bookshelves. However, when it comes to a table or a desk, this is the only design that they have. The desktop size is a little too big for the space that we have, but the biggest issue is the leg that swings out. It wouldn't be very convenient as we want to sit facing the desk. Plus, it's not height adjustable either, so I decided to make my own. The desktop space doesn't have to be as big as this. It definitely has to be height adjustable, and as much as possible, I would like to make it with the reclaimed materials that I have. Here is the version 1 that I made. It consists of 2 shelves which are connected with a few door hinges, as well as support brackets which flip out to frontwards. What you're seeing is the process required to change the height of the desk. Here's a close-up of the undermount bracket. It has the 90 degrees bracket for shelves on the wall, which is attached to an offcut of IVAR legs, which I just happen to have. Unfortunately, for this version, every time I want to change the height of the desk, I have to make new screw holes, which is not the best solution, but that was the solution that I could come up with when I made this desk. The desktop was made from 2 IVAR shelves, one which had the 30 cm depth and the other with 60 cm depth. As you can see, it is height changeable and it can be stored away quite nicely, and it fits the space that we have quite nicely too. Now, this is the second space that I need to make a desk again, but I knew that I could do better than version 1. For version 2, I thought of doing this static version that doesn't flip up or down. This is how I made it. The first thing I wanted to make was the locking bolts for the height changing mechanism. The locking bolts were made out of short metal rods cut off from an old clothesline. And the ends were sharpened a little bit so that they would fit into the holes on the IVAR legs. The next step was to bend these rods into L shapes. In total, I needed 8 of these. This is the base of the height adjusting mechanism. I had to carefully mark the locations of the slots where the locking bolts would be slotted into. The bottom layer was easier, as I just had to run the bolts through the table saw a few times. This is me checking those locking bolts, being able to slide along the rebates that I made without getting caught. Next, I decided to use a router to make the slots for the top panel. I made a mistake here. You can see that the router is wobbling a bit, which made the hole a little bit larger on some spaces. Retrospectively, I should have made some straight holes with a drill first. Because of the wobble, the mistake was visible from the front, but it didn't affect the function that I was looking for. So I just decided to move on, keep doing the same thing, made more holes, and did that on the other board as well. In here you can see how the locking mechanism will work. And this will allow the desk to be height adjustable. I was happy with the lock bolts movement, so I decided to glue all of them together and make it permanent. While the glue was drying, I moved on to making aprons that connect the height adjusting mechanism and the desktop. Because one end of the aprons would be right under where your knees or your hands can touch, I wanted to add a 45 degrees miter. The glue on the height adjusting mechanism dried up really well. After a quick sanding of the whole height adjusting mechanisms, I moved on to installing some attaching fixtures between the height adjusting mechanism and also the bracket, which will go under the desk. What I'm drilling here are the holes big enough for the bolts that I wanted to use. It was important to be the bolts so that the desktop can be removed when I wanted to change the height of the desk. Next, I transfer the hole locations to the height adjusting mechanisms from the aprons earlier by lightly tapping onto the same brad tip bit that I used to make the holes. Using these marked locations, I moved on to screwing in these threaded inserts. Here I am preparing a drill bit to make the hole for the threaded inserts to go in. Here's me checking the alignment of the holes on the aprons and also the threaded insert. You may notice that I'm using different bolts for each hole. That's because they were the only M6 bolts that I had at the time. The final part of the construction of this IVAR desk version 2 was to attach the aprons to the underside of the desktop. Before installation, I realized that I forgot to put some wax to the locking bolts so that they can go in and out very smoothly. As you can see, the height adjusting mechanism worked really well. The locking bolt is very steady and it seemed very secure. The last thing to do was to secure the desktop to the height adjusting mechanism using the bolts. The height adjusting desk works really well, but it was not as space saving as I wanted it to be. So I decided to move on to the version 3. Version 3 has the flip-up mechanism from the version 1 as well as the height changing capability from the version 2. As you can see, it uses 30 cm depth shelf as well as 60 cm depth shelf as desktop. The aprons that I made for the version 2 needed to be cut shorter. This was because I didn't want to make another set of aprons, which would have involved transferring the hole locations and then making new holes to the new stock again. It might not seem that way, but this was more time saving to make the new aprons. The flip-up portion of the desk was a little bit too deep for the room that we had, so I decided to cut it to a little bit smaller size. The new aprons were cut again, and the mitre was added to one corner, just like the version 2. As you can see, there is an edge that is not painted in white, as the board was ripped. This was later painted in white and finished with the water-based clear satin indoor varnish. these heavy-duty hinges worked really well. I then moved on to making the undermount support brackets, which consist of a bookshelf bracket and also a block of wood, which were connected like this, just like the version 1's brackets under the desk. The undermount brackets were connected to the height adjusting mechanism using these gate hinges. These gate hinges were oriented in a way that it supports the weight the most when it's in an open position. I decided to put the small screw on top of the undermount brackets. They prevent the brackets to open too far. From this angle, you can see how the screw that was screwed in works as a stopper for the undermount brackets. I'm really happy with this version 3. It is height adjustable. Unlike the version 1 of the desk, it doesn't require screwing the brackets to the legs. The desktop can be stored away when it's not being used, which means there's more space for you to walk around. And that means it's better than the version 2 as well. I'm also really happy that I managed to make the necessary parts using the offcuts or reclaimed materials, apart from, of course, IVAR shelves as the desktops, the wooden L brackets as the undermount support for the desktop, and the hardware. But I had most of the hardware just lying around in the workshop anyway. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. I certainly enjoyed the process of coming up with a solution. I hope you have a lovely day. I'll see you in the next video.